Few days I slept, few days I prayed, but then I just became restless. And then, of course, seeing the TV, and people said, don't watch TV, but we had to know which areas were locked or which areas were not, or whatever. Innumerable initiatives were created online to offer solidarity, physical, psychological, and spiritual well-being. This is where the spiritual well-being aspect came up. Because you see, at the end of the day, when humans get desperate and there's nothing else, the only thing we think of, especially the believers in the monotheist religions, we think of Allah. Online communities came together to practice recreational sports and spiritual religious activities together. I mean, Pakistan TV showed some very nice programs also. Now, I thought before I go into details, maybe the younger ones are not thinking, but I think Pakistan over the years, and especially the younger generation, I find that the younger generation, for some reason, have become more religious compared to the age group. My age group are the ones younger to me, for example, were totally anti-religion or didn't want to think of it, etc. But I think I need to say spirit is sometimes referred to as soul. It's a non-physical part of person which is the seat of emotions and character that is believed to remain alive even after death. You see, the only solace we get in bereavements, and only solace when, we always think, okay, we'll meet in heaven, hopefully, and hopefully in Jannah, not in hell. Spirit is also considered as a courage and determination that helps people to survive in difficult times and to keep their way of life and their beliefs. In English dictionary, a spirit is described as a particular way of thinking, feeling, or attitude, especially a way that is typical of a particular group. Now, spirituality generally refers to a deep-seated individual sense of connection through which each person's life and experience is contributing to a valued and greater whole, together with a sense of belonging and acceptance. Spirituality is expressed through art, through poetry, myth as well as religious practice. Spirituality is the personal quest for understanding answers to ultimate questions about life, about meaning, and about relationship with the sacred or transcendent, which may or may not lead to arise from the development of religious rituals and the formation of a community. For decades, religious attendance in most parts of the world has been declining. People stopped going to mosques, but I think it's interesting that in Pakistan, I find the attendance has increased over the years, maybe because we are going through real crisis and people get fed up, the youngsters get fed up. In 2018 survey by the Pew Research Center has found that globally adults under 40 are the least likely to consider themselves religious. But in 2019, the same survey by the same organization found that the number of American adults who considered themselves non-religious was growing. The anxieties of 2020 have led many to search for greater meaning in their lives. The pandemic has made it easier for people to explore their spirituality with the move to online religious worship. The spiritual renewal. Modern societies prior to COVID-19 pandemic focused mainly on the body and the well-being. There are lots of programs going on about well-being, largely excluding spirituality and thus narrowing human desires only to the physical sphere. We go and go for plastic surgery, we go for rejuvenating, we do all sorts of things, yoga, this. A man of body and emotions dominated over the man of spirit. And let me tell you one thing, whatever you do, if in your heart you're not satisfied, you're not content, and you do not sleep with peace, there will no plastic surgery, nothing, no makeup is going to bring that color or the spark on your face. I'll promise you that. Research indicates that people experiencing fear, suffering, illness often experience a spiritual renewal. Haven't you noticed that people who have, say, like cancer or have, for example, even during earthquake, and I went through COVID, I went through COVID, but I also had hepatitis C. And it was terrible because at that time, it was early, it was 2004 before the earthquake, And I was always religious, my parents taught me. But you know, there was a strange feeling when I prayed. I kept on reciting Ayat Karima, I kept on reading Yasin. And a stage came and it didn't matter whatever. And the aches and pains were terrible. The strange fear of death was there. And I thought, my God, God's been so kind, etc. If I go. This is just a road and I'm going to go to my eternal place, whatever. And that really created spiritual renewal. And in spite of my weakness, I worked in the earthquake area for 1.5 years and wrote books and manuals for handling psychotrauma. Perhaps a new generation of coronavirus is being shaped in which the development of spirituality will create the mature attitude based on truth and freedom. I wish the young people were there. I wish the young residents were there. But unfortunately, nobody's here. We both worked very hard for our presentation. But I think still something is better than nothing. If one person hears, they will go on. And I'm sure Shaukat will put it in his magazine or in his doctor publication, and people will read. Spiritual well-being and mental health. Spirituality is a source of comfort, as I already mentioned, support and meaning. Instills the idea of sense of belonging, as I said, existential interconnectedness, promoting mental health. In the literature, the accent has been placed on the association that exists between having spirituality and having a greater perception of well-being, physical and mental health. You transcend all those, and you just sort of, you are just totally at a different level. Furthermore, particularly important aspect is related to coping or the function performed by spiritual well-being in the management of stressful events. Spiritual coping can be understood as cognitive and behavioral efforts to find or maintain meaning, purpose, and connection in the face of difficult situations. I remember a long time back when I was going to America, I was very young, I just passed and I went and I was single, nobody wanted me to go, and you know how the traditions are. This was way back in early 70s, and I told my mother, what's going to happen? You're not there, and what will happen? Abba had died. You know what she said? She pointed to the jugular, and she said, Allah is even closer than this to you. And believe me, from that day, if anything happened, he said, Beta padho, Yasin padho, Surah Rahman padho, wo padho, kya kehte, Durood Sharif padho. And believe me, all my life I've been praying these things, and I am a person who will tell you, this kept me going. I am what I am. It's primarily because of my faith, and whatever. But I think faiths, the monotheist religions, they all help. And of course, Islam, we feel, is the best, is the most purest form and the latest form of religion. Pandemic images of collective death and missed rights. This was another trauma of extreme kind. Relatives and friends could not attend the funerals. And the solace of collecting mourning with the family led to further isolation, pain and suffering. कहते हैं ना कि आप डेड पर्सन का उसको चेहरा देख लें, उसको दफना दें तो सब्र आ जाता है. तो ये भी नहीं यहाँ पे था. The sense of suspension of time, of loneliness, lack of reality burst into our lives through the images that came to us from TV and social media. Believe me, we wanted not to watch TV, but we couldn't stop. My husband would say, let's look at the headlines. And once we were there, then we would go on and on. This fear, which progressively started from the onset of pandemic, had turned into terror and bewilderment. It is getting better. I hope gradually we'll be able to control. But it was terrible, and it's still there. The pandemic, from being a word of difficult scientific meaning, acquired a precise, full and absolute meaning, which was death. Pandemic, if anybody had, you felt just okay. कोई guarantee नहीं कि आप बच, कोई chance ही नहीं है. Pandemic has impacted religion and faith in different ways. Numerous restrictions have been implemented worldwide. Believers conflicted with the authorities' warnings that gatherings must be limited to combat the spread of the virus. And unfortunately, everywhere, the believers thronged to their worship places. In Pakistan, the mullahs got berserk, and they were doing all sorts of things. Religion always, and I'll tell you later on how they changed. Religion has always played a role of the balm for the soul, and the regular religious participation is associated with better emotional and mental health outcomes. I just have got few sort of sayings, few news from the different religious people. They are mostly from America, Europe. There was a pastor, Bruxley, who found the benefit to be online, and he planned to carry the lessons in future because he found that was very easy. And COVID, he said, has slowed down and destabilized our regular routine. It has become, but it has become an exploratory time. At home, we can sit and think, and really quite a few people thought about things, did things, thought about life, reassessed their life, refocused on different things which they had left. People are developing new habits, new interests, and finding new ways of just being in this world. And there was this guy, the Imam at the BC Muslim Association in Richmond, British Columbia, said more people have been connected with the mosque during the pandemic. And they were not necessarily the Muslims. They were people who didn't even have any faith. They would go and give charity because he was doing something to soothe people. Rabbi Goldstein, Elsie Goldstein at a Reformed Jewish synagogue in Toronto, she said, I'm constantly shocked. Attendance growing with more young adults, amazing. You know, we are talking of hash, this, that, and the other, and alcohol, and drugs, and dancing, etc., pornography, but things change. It became an anchor for these people. We are all being tossed on stormy seas, and if you look out on the horizon and see a boat that seems to be sturdy and steady, you might want to get on it, being more stable and steady in stormy waters. है तो नहीं है कि आपको कहीं वो सहारा मिल जाए आप वहाँ चले जाते, तो वही हुआ. Now, religious faith-based organizations and faith communities can play a major role in saving. They are primary source of support, comfort, guidance, and direct health care and social service for the communities. Religious leaders of the faith-based organizations and communities of faith can share health information, can provide pastoral and spiritual support during public health emergencies. And this is what started, and I think it was started in Pakistan, and thank God the mullahs behaved themselves. WHO acknowledges the special role of religious leaders, faith-based organizations, and faith communities in COVID-19 education, preparedness, and response. Please do not forget that. And my personal view as a psychiatrist, senior person, I think the message you take is never forget, this importance of faith. Never forget that this is very, very important. Spirituality. So to conclude, when being exposed to a threat, people use various strategies of survival, faith being one of them, which allows us to keep hope as well as feel a sense of security, because it is something which nobody can control, but there is a power which takes care of you. The worldwide situation can bring people together also through joint prayer. There were joint prayers in so many in Europe, there were quite joint prayers, or they were going to the religious TV channels. Modern society prior to COVID pandemic focused mainly on the body and well-being, largely excluding spirituality, and thus narrowing human desires only to the physical sphere. A man of body and emotions dominated over the man of spirit. We are men of spirit. We cannot survive. We are human beings. I'm not sure if the animals have spirit, but human beings definitely have spirit. So we cannot deny that. Research and surveys indicate that people experiencing fear, suffering, or illness often experience a spiritual renewal. I felt a spiritual renewal. I really felt, and even in COVID, I felt a spiritual renewal. Perhaps a new generation of coronavirus is being shaped, in which the development of spirituality will create a mature attitude based on truth and freedom. Evidence shows that religiosity and spirituality are highly used in critical, I already mentioned, and they are associated with positive clinical outcomes. I just thought I could quickly show you a study also. It was properly done. 485 participants included from all regions of Brazil. There was a high use of religion and spiritual beliefs during the pandemic, and this was associated with better mental health outcomes, lower levels of worrying, and was associated with greater private religious activities as well. So it has to be private as well as communal. Conclusion, I think religion and spirituality seem to have an important role on the relief of suffering, having an influence on health outcomes, and minimizing the consequences of social isolation also. Because when you are thinking of God Almighty, then things are different. You don't feel alone. Studies and observations highlight the importance of public health measures that ensure that the continuity of religion and spirituality activities during the pandemic and the training of healthcare professionals to address these issues. I mean, healthcare professions should know that patients come to me in clinics because I'm also doing private practice. So they come to me and say, "Aur bataएं डॉक्टर साहब, और बताएं." Then I always ask them, "Are you a believer?" हाँ, नमाज पढ़ते थे, हाँ, अब नहीं पढ़ते. मैं कहती ट्राई करके, नहीं दिल नहीं चाहता, करके तो देखो, एक बैठ जाओ, कोई पढ़ लो, कोई सूरह फातिहा पढ़ लो, ये कर लो, बैठ के पढ़ लो, and gradually they find strength in it, and it goes on and on, and I find, alhamdulillah, when they come to me, they say, "डॉक्टर साहब, ये जो आपने बताया है ना, इसने मुझे एक तरह से इतना स्ट्रॉन्ग वो चीज़ दी है, जो दवाएं आपने दी सचमुच बहुत सब ठीक ठाक थी, पर इसने मुझे सबसे निकाल दिया." जब मैंने देखी ना, आप खुद देखें, जो आपने अल्लाह पे छोड़ दिया. मुझे हर वक्त मेरी अम्मी कहती थी, तुम कहते बेटा अल्लाह पे छोड़ दो ना, तुमने मेहनत करो और अल्लाह पे छोड़ दो. आप यकीन माने, खुदा की कसम में यहाँ खड़ी हुई हूँ, मैंने जब अल्लाह से मांगा, अल्लाह ने दिया. और कई चीज़ें जो मैंने इतने दिल से नहीं मांगी, क्योंकि शायद मुझे था भी, दिल की भी बात होती ना, तो वो नहीं मिली, और फिर मुझे पता लगा कि मेरे लिए ठीक भी नहीं था. उसके बजाय मुझे इतनी चीज़ें मिली जो मैं हैरान हो गई. So God is really merciful. He is always there. पूरा वक्त ये तो दिखाते हैं ना हमारे मुल्ला, सांप होंगे, आग में जल रहे होंगे, यूं होगा, मनूस मारे फजलुर रहमान की तरह जिंदगी आराम कर दी हमारी. ओ भाई, इस्लाम is the most wonderful religion, is great, and I think Islam is one of the most. कोई ऐसी हरकत है जो मुल्ला कह रहे हैं कब वक्त वो कुछ भी नहीं है. Pakistan is a wonderful country. I am so happy and so proud. Yeah, this is Pakistan. I think whether को आप माने नहीं माने, ये नया पाकिस्तान है. इमरान ने किया होगा नहीं किया होगा, हमने सब ने किया. Love your country, be and have faith. अपने solid चलो, ज़मीन पे पैर रख के चलो. Thank you so much. Thank you नासर, तुमने इतना अच्छा प्रोग्राम बताया, और I think सब डॉक्टर्स को भी पता होना चाहिए. Thank you. Any question, anything you'd like to ask me? I think दिल में अपने दिल को पकड़ो, अपने स्पिरिट को पकड़ो, or just carry on. And I think Dr. Saab is sitting, my favorite psychologist, the head of Women's University. Dr. Saab, don't you agree what you've gone through or I've gone through, that faith helped us a lot? आज इनको दे दें, जरा सब माइक दे दें. हाँ, आ जाए प्लीज़, आ जाए. देखें, ये बड़ी मशहूर वाइस चांसलर थी विमेंस यूनिवर्सिटी की. मैं इसलिए कह रही हूँ कि विमेंस डे वाला पीरियड चल रहा है, ये मंथ हमारा विमेंस डे का है. और आई थिंक जो फेथ और सारी चीज़ें चलती हैं दुनिया में, वो बेसिकली औरतों से चलती है. तो ये बताएंगी, मैंने तो बता दिया, ये बताएंगी एज ए साइकोलॉजिस्ट. इतनी बच्चियाँ साइकोलॉजिस्ट बैठी हुई हैं, ये बताएंगी कि कैसे इनकी ज़िंदगी में और इनके टीचिंग में और इसमें क्या है. ज़रा सा दो लफ्ज़ कह के ख़त्म करेंगे.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Unaiza, one of my favorite psychiatrists, and we have been working together for the last 35, 40 years. We're old. But I think what you just said today is a journey that each one of us has gone through. It is a journey of spiritual discovery. और आपने बिल्कुल सही कहा, शायद मैं जब 20 साल की थी या 21 साल की थी, मैं कहती थी ये सब मैं काम कर लूँगी. आहिस्ता आहिस्ता पता चला कि यू नीड अपने माँ बाप के अलावा एक और है सपोर्ट के लिए, आपको ढूंढना है. और अब जब मैं रात को दुआ करती हूँ अपने बच्चों के लिए, अब बिल्कुल यही करती हूँ कि अल्लाह उनको भी हिफ्ज़ व अमान में रखे. ये रोज़ रात को मैं बच्चों के लिए दुआ करके सो. और जो मुझसे बात करता है, साइकोलॉजिकली जो स्ट्रेंथ हमें मिलती है इस स्पिरिचुअल ग्रोथ के साथ, मैं नहीं कहती हम रिलीजियस हो जाएं, मैं नहीं मानती कि हम कंटिन्यूसली वो रिचुअल्स करें, बट टच योर सेल्फ विद इन योर सेल्फ एंड यू विल फाइंड what Dr. Unaiza has talked about. It is your journey within yourself, it is your journey of self-discovery, and what you have is invaluable. उसको डिस्कवर करने की ज़रूरत है. और certainly religion, spirituality खास तौर पे makes a difference. Thank you very much.